Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott, and we today are going to be talking about impact and sustainability investing. These are two very, very core issues and topics of today and our world as we know it. And we've brought some of the best and the brightest who've been investing and building and advising and doing everything in between in all of these areas, in all the industries that touch each and every one of these. And so we wanted to bring together a outstanding group. I can't tell you how many people I'm looking at because it's just phenomenal. We brought together a great set of individuals from around the world to share with us all of their opinions, what they're seeing on the ground from their experience around impact and sustainability investing. It's going to be a long episode. It's going to be a ton of fun. We've got a lot of voices to be heard from today. So get ready. We're going to dive right in. Big thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in. If you like what you heard, click subscribe. Do reach out if you'd like to be on a show like today, like an epic panel of today's version. We'd love to have you and find the right industry topic, region around the world for you to speak on. And entrepreneurs, we got less than 60 days for you to pitch out your company, to share with us what you're doing, to get exposure to the live audience before the end of the year. Do reach out. We'd love to have you here on the virtual stage at VCTV for you to connect and build relationships with us as investors, but also the live audience. Reach out to the team and or myself. We'd love to find the right spot for you. With that, also a big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria and the entire organization for making VCTV possible every single day. With that, let's go ahead and jump right into introductions because we got a lot of them to get today. Brett, welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure. Intro background for everybody.
Yep, well, I'll try to be real quick. Brett Noyes, founder and director of Unventures. We're an early stage investor syndicate, primarily focused on the fintech vertical and some of the kind of offshoots there. We originally started out as a fintech incubator program in the Bay Area. And as we went to go fundraising, we actually, as we talked to investors, they kept putting us in the impact bucket. So that's not an area that we ever really saw ourselves as. But I guess when you do good in this space, you somehow end up in that bucket.
Absolutely. And speaking of doing good, someone who has done a number of projects and companies in the space of not just doing good, but truly doing great things for the world. Mark, welcome back to the show. Pleasure to have you. Intro background for everybody.
Wow. Okay. Well, I started my career in the concert industry in Miami and then ventured out into to New York and other places, Latin America, Europe. Mainly trying to work with communities. That was kind of my idea at the beginning, giving underserved communities free concerts. So I've never been motivated by money. That usually turns off people that try to invest with me because that's not my motivation. My motivation is to leave the world a better place. So I invest in coffee, I invest in knitters, I invest in a lot of different things, but mainly I always look at the magic word that my colleagues said, and it's impact, and we could all decide what type of impact we want to make. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mark. Next up, Dr. Srikanth, welcome back. It's been a pleasure to see you here today. We had a little chance to chat before the show started, but a little intro, a little background for everybody.
I'm Dr. Srikanth Pathasarathi. Thank you so much, Kyle. I'm Dr. Srikanth Pathasarathi. I'm an advocate and I specialize in investments of family offices, which typically have $1 billion plus in AUM. At the moment, I'm looking very cleanly at impact investments.
Wonderful. Keith, welcome back to the show as well. Area you focus on both impact and sustainability. A little intro, a little background for everybody.
Hey, that's great. Thanks, Kyle. Great to be here with such a party going on here. Terrific. I'm looking forward to hearing what everybody says. Yeah, I've been in impact and sustainability investing for 20 years now. I was an entrepreneur before that, but initially with Mitsubishi Corporation and then as president of BASF Venture Capital America, the venture arm of the world's largest chemical company. And then a decade with Pangea Ventures, focused on the chemistry and material impact side, which is something I'm going to talk about today. This year I formed a new firm called Upper Stage Ventures, and it's a hybrid PE-VC model. We are taking controlling positions in companies impacting the supply chain.
Wonderful, and welcome back. And Matthew, welcome as well. Intro and background for everybody.
I'm Matt Greenfield. I'm managing partner of a social impact venture fund called Rethink Education. It also has two sister funds, one of which is called Rethink Food, which is run by the former president of Pepsi Global Beverages, and Rethink Impact, which has a gender lens and also invests in sustainability ventures. I'm also on the board of Impact Capital Managers, a new trade association.
Outstanding. Julio, welcome back to the show as well. A little intro, a little background for everybody, please.
Nice to be back. Great seeing you, Kyle, and so many familiar faces, some new ones. Look forward to the discussion. I'm Julio Marquez. One of the partners, the managing partner of New York Bay Capital. We are an advisory company that specializes in Latin America mostly. That means we advise Latin American companies on how to obtain capital. And sometimes we advise, North American, or I guess you could call American, Canadian, and others on how to do business or what kind of investments they can make south of the border. By the border, I mean the Mexico border. So we touch impact investing. I couldn't say it's our focus, but when you're working with countries like Mexico, like Ecuador, like Costa Rica, you have you're almost always indirectly, if not directly, making an impact and thinking about community and social issues. So happy to be here, and thanks for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Happy to have you as well. Irina, welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you. I know you've got some exciting things to talk about today as well, but before we get into that, a little intro, a little background.
Yes, thank you, Kyle. Pleasure to be back. So many speakers today. I love it. Look, the impact panel is growing, and it's so pleasant to see that, right? Usually it's the blockchain fintech, but look at us. Irina Litchfield, pleasure to be here. Love VCTV. I'm founder of Blockchain Cube. It's a blockchain integration company, and I'm president of Lumeria. Lumeria is where capital meets innovation. And as always, such a pleasure to be here. Love seeing all the faces that I know and some new faces as well.
Wonderful. Welcome to have you. Last but not least, the spark of today's panel, the man of the mystery, the grandmaster of artificial intelligence, ladies and gentlemen, Gary Fowler. A little intro, a little background. It's just
it always goes over the
good
top.
fun.
I am humbled to be here. I feel like I have the Dalai Lama in front of me sometimes, In fact, every time, Kyle. Thank you. I'm not worthy. Anyhow, thanks. It's great to see everybody. It's great to be here with friends. It's just wonderful. I love it. Feels like a family. My name's Gary Fowler, and I'm a serial entrepreneur. Did my first startup, actually 21, but I did one earlier, little things. But 21, I did a construction tech company. Didn't know what the heck I was doing, but lucky it was successful. And today, 16 companies later, I'm involved in artificial intelligence. I've got 18 portfolio companies today that I'm dealing with, covering the range up to $20 million in revenue with one of them. All of them are hot and atop the space. Love artificial intelligence, love impact. We have a $100 million fund that we're raising today in Atlanta for the Black community. I've been working on that community for 12 years. One of the board members of the NAACP is on our board. So I'm passionate about it, but also sustainability, because we've got expanding population, less land, and we're making things not clean. So how to make the world a better place. And, it's interesting. Recently, we were the first time to see the Himalayas in India in 30 years. And people were astounded that they could do it. But this little reprieve with the pandemic has actually created some beautiful opportunities and let us realize how dirty we make the place sometimes. So let's clean it up.
Absolutely. And welcome everybody. And actually, absolutely a pleasure to have each and every one of you on today's panel. As Irina mentioned, this is an absolutely packed panel and maybe one of the largest that we've done here on VCTV in a little bit. So we're going to dive right in and jump in. And I wanted to expand today's topic from just impact to sustainability, because when a lot of people hear about impact, they also think of sustainability, and these two have so much overlap. And so want to hear from each and every one of you what you think and what you see as the current state of impact investing. And that includes sustainability and everything in between, whether that be financial inclusion, whether that be from the fashion industry, whether that be from the energy side, whatever it may be in terms of your industry of focus. Would love to hear your current state and view of that. And Brett, let's kick it off with you. You were pitching investors. They thought you were in the bucket of impact, and here you are now being thrown back in that. So talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing when it comes to impact investing in your world.
Sure. Well, I mean, there's definitely more acceptance and exuberance around the space. I don't know how much of it's real. I guess the other people on the panel could kind of talk a little bit more about that. Other pieces that you were talking about, right? There's just different pieces of this, right? So we're not focused on sustainability per se. Our focus is financial inclusion, right? We'd love to see everyone in the world have basic banking services, right? Like that's our goal and our mission. That's the area that we're focused on. I mean, just at a high level, you know, I think everyone like needs to find the problem that they want to solve in their lifetime, and it's probably going to be a lifetime's worth of work, and you might make a little dent in it. So I think, like, to kind of answer your question, right, it's in vogue right now. There's a lot of buzzwords. There's a lot of people talking about it, you know, oftentimes, right, like it's, you know, but there's kind of the workers are few, probably. There's probably a really small amount of people that are actually doing the work. So hopefully, you know, the workers increase and each person kind of solves the problem that they want to see solved in their lifetime.
It's a great point, and let's definitely take on that. Let's cut through the noise and the buzzwords and get down to the raw facts, right? So thank you, Brett, for bringing that up. I want to come back to you in a few minutes on financial inclusion, but before we do, Dr. Shrikant, your view on what's happening in impact. I mean, you work with family offices, over $1 billion plus in AUM. So asset under management for those tuning in today. What are you seeing? What is being demanded? What is being asked of in terms of impact and impact investing as people are looking to deploy capital and you're working with them?
So I would be honest with you, Kyle, and my fellow panelists. The focus on impact has been quite low for the past 1 year owing to the epidemic the pandemic that we have been having. But I see family offices actually regaining their importance of impact investing. And one of the testaments of that is that in India, you know, it's an elephant to move, isn't it? I mean, after China, this is the biggest elephant that you can move in terms of impact investments. But you see electric vehicles being used. The Prime Minister has supported impact investments to the extent of committing $1.5 trillion. And EDG goals are set up, clean energy is set up, 2050 we want to be carbon neutral. But things are happening at you know, it's too large an elephant to actually move. So things will take time. But one thing which is actually making strides is something called, you know, corporate governance, impact investment in corporate governance, and responsible investing with whatever investment that you do. So responsible investment is actually growing in India. And if you see 1.5 trillion, you know, there's enough for responsible investors out there, is what I'm seeing in India, at least.
Thank you so much. And Mark, I want to come to you. I mean, you do a lot in impact, and I'm giving you that. So you can talk about it how you will. But I know based on your efforts and some of the stories that you shared here previously on VCTV, you actually do quite a bit in this area. And we'd love to hear your thoughts as to what's happening on the ground. Where are things, or where are things not, in terms of the current state of impact and sustainability in your world?
Well, I think impact should be local, because the problems are always local. And when I say problems, the solutions are always localized. I mean, if we go out of that realm of reachability, then it's easier to be hoisted to one side or the other side. So as long as you stay local and you create a local impact, and other communities realize that the same issues happen locally, but on a global level. So we're having these issues in Costa Rica, as Julio would know, and then probably the same issue in Flint, Michigan with water. You know what I mean? So how do we do that? We can't try to get a global entity to try to control that stuff, because the solution in Costa Rica might be different than the solution in Flint, Michigan, right? So although the problem is the same, the solution is different. And I've realized that in a lot of places. I mean, being in the music concert business, I realized that, you know, you deal with a guy like Khaled $400 a whole day, and then he becomes a $27 million a year type of player. In the concert world, the impact of that is that many of the communities that don't have the budgets to put together great concerts are stuck with not necessarily bad musicians, but the high quality of musicians that drive the traffic to a concert don't exist. So a few years ago, I started a company called Bandflow, and Bandflow made local places, local municipalities with low budgets be able to find really good talent anywhere that was sponsored by people. The program didn't go as far as I wanted to. Impact with Knit Farm is we get knitters from all over the world in small communities who spend a lot of time doing really good, elaborate type of knitted, like the fisherman sweater you were wearing on one show. And I mean, they spend hours on this stuff, 60, 70, 80 hours, and they sell it for like $30 at a fair, local fair. So we're showing them how to sell that to people in New York, how to sell it to Kyle, who's a billionaire, how to sell it to Gary Fowler. Because I mean, then what they do gives them more access to other things that are going to better their life. They're not necessarily interested in buying Ferraris or anything like the hedge fund managers. They're just looking to, you know, have a better life. And with Fair Play for Kids, which is a nonprofit organization that we started in Barcelona, we basically represent immigrant children that are pretty much, what do you call that? I never got that done to me before. Benched, right? I never got benched in my life, but they get benched because they don't have the proper paperwork, because they're parents, because they're underage. So they don't have the money that these, you know, better to do kids have, that they can hire attorneys. So what Fair Play for Kids is, we have a network of attorneys. We have a network of families that represent and help these kids get legal so that they can obtain the Fair Play for the FIFA licenses through Fair Play for Kids. So we've helped about 150,000 kids worldwide. And my son was the first one. When we moved to Barcelona, he was actually on the Barcelona team, and FIFA, after 8 weeks, said he couldn't play because I'm American, and he was born in Costa Rica. My wife is from Costa Rica. So, I mean, there was a whole bunch of issues there that prevented him from playing. So how do you do that to a kid that's 6 years old? It makes him sad. So I don't like to see kids that are sad. And I come from an impact family. My father started one of the first little leagues in the Bronx, and that little league created about 40 MLB professional players. So that's my culture. I fight for people.
Wow. Thank you, Mark. And on that note, Matt, I want to come to you next. I mean, this is a perfect transition, I think, to a lot of the work that you've done from the education space, now getting into impact as a whole in food. Tell us a little bit more, playing off of Mark's comments, a little bit of what you're seeing happening or not happening in the space currently.
Well, I guess the big news continues to be the big money flowing in from private equity fund families, which suddenly have limited partners that are demanding impact solutions. Wealth management firms are a step behind. So one of our meaningful allocators is one of the larger investment banking wealth management organizations. The other big one in the US still hasn't really figured out what it's doing in impact investing. And as wealth transitions to millennials, one of the biggest transitions in history underway, they're starting to demand opportunities to invest in a meaningful and impactful way. And their current wealth managers are not giving them that opportunity. So there's this massive pent up demand. Same with sovereign wealth funds and pension funds, which would like to direct more money into impact investing. I had a conversation with the state pension fund of the state of New York, and the man I was introduced to was definitely interested in impact investing. But then at one point in the conversation, he said that they couldn't own more than 20% of a fund, and they had to invest at least $250 million, which basically rules out venture capital as an asset class entirely. So there's a need for more intermediaries like funds of funds to step down to the level at which venture funds can accommodate the cash. I guess the other thing that's going on is just that the returns on social investing and impact investing strategies of all kinds are starting to look pretty darn good. For example, back in 2013, the students at Middlebury College attempted to get the university to divest all of its investments in the fossil fuel industry. And eventually they lost, and the administration trustees sort of patted them on the head and said, when you're grown-ups, you'll understand that, you know, we have to have a really diversified set of assets, otherwise we're compromising investment returns. Then last year, they changed their minds and said, we are going to divest all of our fossil fuel holdings. And we're going to do it over 15 years in a slow and deliberate way, because their outsourced chief investment officer wouldn't they had the same portfolio for everyone, so they couldn't unfold those investments for one of their clients and not for all of them. And then this year happened, and the coronavirus, and suddenly the value of all energy holdings plunged. I think in some ways the most, coal is the dirtiest of fuels, the one we most want to get rid of. The value of coal, even before coronavirus, had plunged to the point where in many cases it was not worth digging it up out of the ground and taking it to an existing coal plant. And if you look at the Dow Jones US Coal Index, it reached a peak over the last 20 years of 660. And I think it was in the hundreds at the point when Middlebury made that decision not to divest. And it's now hovering around 5 or 6. So monster losses for the people who were patronizing those kids and telling them that they couldn't divest from fossil fuels because they'd be sacrificing investment returns. So I find that to be a really interesting example.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Mark, do you have a comment to add?
No, I just said that's a good one. I love those type of stories. Like I told you.
You did. For those who haven't had a chance to look back, Mark's got some phenomenal stories. Go back and watch some of the episodes. He's got a ton. But Matthew as well. I mean, to Mark's comment, I'll echo it further. It's a great story. Brett, do you have something to add? I saw you on mute as well.
I'd just say that probably everyone that's on this panel is probably a little bit visionary, right? We see the world how it can be and how it should be, right? And not everyone agrees or gets it today. So if you can stay in the game long enough, hopefully these ideas that we have will come to fruition.
Absolutely.
Well, and speak into the future as investors. I remember when Tom Steyer and other people said they were divesting back in 2012, and even to me, that seemed like a somewhat bold and aggressive move. It didn't take that long for them to be totally validated, right? The future arrived a lot faster than anyone expected.
And I mean, and that's what happens when it becomes a trendy thing. Then it changes everything. I mean, I had my first Bitcoin meeting in Costa Rica in a little French cafe in 2013. A guy named Brent Strapper. He's a guy who actually offered to buy Silk Road with the FBI and filed everything. You can Google him, Brent Strapper. He's from San Diego. And he sat down with me and offered me lunch and said, Mark, you need to get into this, this, and this. At that time, he thought I was still consulting offshore bookmakers. And this was kind of a way when, Bush said you can't use Visa or MasterCard or whatever to bet online. He had the solution. Brent's nowhere to be found now. I can still contact him, but you could imagine he was buying Bitcoin at 13 cents. And I looked at him and I said, okay, I'll buy some. I think I bought 100 Bitcoins. I think I threw that laptop away. Back then, you used to download the Bitcoin so I'm still looking for a laptop.
Anyone finds a laptop with Mark's name on it, please return it to Mark Lugo.
50% commission.
He'll give you his contact information at the end, and there's a commission for it as well. Keith, thank you, Matt. Keith, I want to come to you. I mean, Matt talked about energy and this changeover and long changeover that in some cases it's required to go from traditional investments to moving on from those that are non-traditional that will become traditional for us and around energy. You do a lot of work in energy and sustainability. Talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing in impact and then in general sustainability.
Yeah, when you think about the ESG of impact, all have urgent, long felt problems that need to be solved. But if you want to make money, as we all do as investors, the easiest place is in the E. The environmental impact is the easiest place to solve an economic pain point where customers will be willing to pay. And there has to be some urgency around that pain point. Example of no urgency would be when I first got into this business, when I was with Mitsubishi, they were and still are really keen on fuel cell technology. Fuel cell technology is fascinating and it really works really well. And for the environment, at least for mobile transportation applications, there may never be anything better. But the pain just wasn't being felt strongly enough to get over the economic realities of fuel cells. Now, they have made tremendous progress. They get cheaper, they get more efficient. There's less and less of the platinum group metals required, which is not only impacting the cost of them, but also making them more environmentally sustainable when you think about the beginning of their supply chain. However, even at the time, we said fuel cells are the technology of tomorrow and always will be. And here we are 20 years later, and they still are the technology of tomorrow. Whereas technology that solves a really urgent pain point, you can see that adopted within just a few years. One of the spaces, probably the biggest space for environmental impact in terms of CO2, in terms of water, is in the agricultural area. And one of my investments is a company called Vesteron Corporation. They're in Research Triangle Park, as well as in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And they make pesticides from bio-derived molecules. Absolutely wonderful stuff. It's as effective as synthetics for the target organisms, but it doesn't affect any other organism. Mammals, birds, fish, even bees, untouched by this stuff. Wonderful. Now, you might think, oh, that'll be great for the future, and it's going to take regulatory pressures for these things to be adopted, and that is somewhat true. However, some of the urgent pain points that this addressed was because this stuff is non-toxic, you can spray it right up until the day of harvest. There's no pre-harvest interval. So this means that growers have flexibility to protect their crops right until they have to harvest and ship them, as opposed to the synthetic pesticides that require a period of days in between last application and between when you're actually able to harvest and sell the product. Now, this is an urgent problem because you can lose a lot of your crop right at the very end. So this allows growers to have a lot of flexibility in how they protect their crop and then pick the right day to harvest at peak and sell. This is a great example of a company that's addressing a huge problem, but they're able to find some specific pain points where there is time urgency, which can then drive quick adoption of their products.
It's a great example. And I want to jump to Irina real quick. As you mentioned, agriculture, I know she's focused heavily on that, but in a bigger, broader picture as well with impact. Irina, talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing in this category as well.
Yeah, and thank you for asking that. As we're looking for solutions for our own farm, we're seeing that there are a lot of opportunities in kind of a measuring what, how do we make the impact, and also kind of what are the tools that are there to improve it. As Keith mentioned, there are a lot of interesting solutions that are coming up, in making sure that we increase biodiversity in the topsoil. But what that means is that we can actually create topsoil, right? So, for example, right now we are spraying our land with this bacteria that eats all of the pesticides, and eats all the stuff, all the damage that's been done to our land through years of traditional kind of agriculture treatment, right? So full disclosure, our land, our topsoil is horrible, and it's in the middle of Texas. So we just had the test done, and it's just really terrible. So I think one of the biggest things that I think the opportunities are now that are available is in investment or into regenerative farming. There's a lot of big discussions from many different funds that are happening in understanding of, how do we deploy $1 billion into the solutions? We do have tools for that. It is very well understood. And to be clear, too, regenerative farming is not something that is old way of doing agriculture. It really is a new system. And we arrive to that through, through years of analytics. And there are a lot of people that are brilliant that are kind of created that and are doing that. If you watch the documentary, Kiss the Land, then you will really understand why and how it works. And what I love the most about regenerative farming and opportunities in investment in regenerative farming is that there are a lot of measurable impact that can be monetized as well. And so it really goes directly with what Keith was mentioning, is we need to be able to measure, and with regenerative farming, we can measure. And what's mostly excites me too is that we can also use blockchain technology, of course, to kind of increase the benefits. So we can tokenize, right? We can create a cost-specific offering in a way to where we can empower, farmers to transition to regenerative farming. So to me, those are really big opportunities right now. And most importantly, that when we talk about the impact, it is something that I think is most crucial. We worry a lot about air and quality of air. We have way longer air to, toxic air, nonetheless, all these side effects, but the topsoil, the loss of topsoil is really, really terrible. And so to me, I would encourage entrepreneurs, look better and more at agriculture and see the opportunities in regenerative farming because it is measured. And for investors, I think this is the time to really invest in it, especially in America. And I kind of, I'll pass baton after this point, but we are experiencing one of the biggest transition of land ownership, right, in America. The average age of farmer over 65 years old. So majority of farmers are really old and their children are not interested in having to do anything with the farming. They do not have any interest. And so there's this big transition in the land, in the land ownership right now. And I think that lined up with what we're experiencing in our current reality with the big exodus toward kind of a nature and people living in big cities, buying land. I think these are really great opportunities to really go and acquire a lot of land and start transitioning that into the regenerative farming systems.
Absolutely. Thank you, Irina. Julio, I want to, Matt, sorry, go ahead, Matt. You have a comment.
Just a brief anecdote in response to what Keith and Irina were saying. I lived in California during the drought in the early 90s, and we were being urged, not to take long showers and not to take baths and, to flush the toilet as infrequently as possible. And then I discovered that over 90% of the state's water consumption was agricultural. Most of the remainder was industrial, and only a tiny fraction was residential at all. And of course, most of that was the swimming pools and watering the lawns of really large houses. So there's this distracting focus on personal choices that people are making when the impact potentially, when you look at things like ocean shipping and agriculture, is so much larger.
It's an absolutely great point. And Julio, thank you, Matt. Julio, I want to come to you on what you're seeing as the current state. I mean, so far what we've talked about, you've touched on a lot of areas, including in Latin America. And then Gary, I'm going to come to you next around this to kind of top us off. So Julio, to you, what are you seeing as the current state?
No, the current state is good. Large investors are insisting that large projects all have an impact component to them. So I think it's the big picture is good for impact investment coming from large institutional funds. As we were discussing agriculture, we happen to have a lot of experience, clients, investments in the banana industry, and the worldwide banana industry is huge. Has big public companies like Del Monte. It has governments involved. Whole countries sometimes are devoted to banana production in Central America, especially. And you're right that if anybody could do a little bit to improve the banana industry's very spotty record on environmental impact, they'd be doing the world a big favor, right? As opposed to maybe focusing on small farms. I mean, it's really interesting what's going on at the small farm level, but it's a little bit like saving the water at home that Matthew was talking about. It's you can be very efficient in small farms, but if you can introduce real improvements in large industries like bananas, which not only do you have to grow them, and by the way, they take a lot of water, but also transport them, because bananas are never grown near you. Bananas are grown actually quite far. It's probably the fruit that is the farthest away from you at any one time. If you live in Europe or North America and you're buying bananas, you're really buying a product that is produced, thousands of miles away, that is expensive to produce, although it's a very cheap fruit because of Mother Nature. Banana plants are just so plentiful. And they come with their own wrapping. There are many interesting things about bananas that make them very popular. But I can tell you, transporting the bananas and growing the bananas today, especially when the industry is a little bit in danger because there are certain fungi that attack the bananas. So it's also a big consumer of pesticides because there's really no other way to keep up that huge production that is required to fill up Walmarts and Walmarts and Walmarts and Costco's and Carrefour's full of bananas. Germans in particular love bananas. They're the #1 consumer of bananas in the world per capita. So if anybody knows interesting innovations that could be applied to bananas, I have a million people to introduce you to that would probably be interested. It's just that they're going to be a little skeptical that the way they've been farming bananas for the last 100 years should be changed or ought to be changed. There's this big. We also work closely. I've said it before in other panels with the beef industry in the United States, and that's another industry that functions as if we were still in the 50s. Or 40s or 30s, or maybe even the 1800s. You basically still have the cow, you kill the cow, you chop up the cow, and then you eat the cow. And it involves all kinds of inefficiencies and transport and environmental damage that you wouldn't believe. So I hope these industries can improve. It's going to take a lot of entrepreneurs, and it's going to take a lot of insisting, just because these are industries that have been functioning that same way for a very long time. And by the way, cotton in fashion is a little bit the same too. Mm-hmm. The over-reliance on cotton for fabrics, and how you have to harvest cotton. Mm-hmm. Now, I wanted to also join very briefly the discussion about doing good with one of my favorite investments and clients, the singer D'banj. He is a Nigerian singer, quite popular. You can very easily look him up on YouTube. He has big hits with millions of views, Afro pop type of music. And so he created, in order to do good, he created a company called Cream Platform, and we're happy to have invested in it and support it. And Cream Platform reaches, a lot of population in Africa, especially, that doesn't really have access to much. But if they have a cell phone, they can use Screen Platform as a tool to upload their talent in many verticals. You can be a comic, you can be a basketball player, you can be a musician, a singer, composer, and you upload your content. It's reviewed by a panel of professional, industry people. And then if you're good, they'll discover you and help you develop a career. And, we don't specifically look for impact investments, as I said before when I introduced myself, but sometimes you can find interesting investments that are making an impact, because this is allowing countless, especially kids in poor neighborhoods all over African countries, because they follow Dibanj and know about Dibanj and listen to his music. They can then upload their talent for free, and they can be discovered, and they can have, maybe not for everybody, of course, but if you've got it, it's a bit like American Idol or something like that for Africa, but you don't have to go audition anyway. It's all done as a platform. It's one of the examples that I could come up with of an investment. And singers were mentioned already by some of you guys. Mark, I think you talked about singers and their impact. Relying on figures like that is also sometimes very helpful in many countries to really make an impact.
Absolutely. And thank you, Julio. And Gary, I want to come to you last on this. We've talked about so many different areas, and I know you've touched on a lot of these in terms of your history and your career, and now you're building a fund or focused around around impact. Tell us what you're seeing as the current state of impact investing and sustainability.
Well, I mean, the situation is we have many, many interesting issues today. We've got sea levels rising, projected to be up 1 foot by 2100. Here in Florida, from 1957 to today, they're up 8 inches in some parts of the beaches. At the same time, population's 4x'd over the last 100 years, so we've got to figure out how to use the land more wisely and get more out of it. It's critically important that we do that. So things like artificial intelligence and farm tractors, which is one of the projects we're looking at right now today. So where we invest and I have been working with the Black community for 12 years. In fact, one of the members of the NAACP is on our board. And so what we did is, it's, keep it simple, stupid. I'm just a country boy from Pennsylvania, right? The side of the mountain. So it's like, if you have a great AI company and you put it in a place like Atlanta or Chicago, and you put it in there with a Black community, you find some Black actors that are your friends to help, and the former mayor of Atlanta, you can actually start to create an ecosystem, just like I did in Russia 10 years ago, before people had really done it. So, I mean, it's like keep it simple, stupid. This is not hard, right? You just bring the opportunity, put people in, and it changes. So what I'm looking at is that, I see technologies like biosolvent from Latin America that has the ability using organic products to be able to suck oil out. And then you can, like a sponge, right? This is not hard. It's a sponge, and squeeze the oil back out again, and voila, it's an oil spill. Now you got your oil back. Why don't we look at those technologies? The other thing is waste, right? It used to be we just throw stuff out, put it on the garbage dump, and forget about it. And Irina mentioned this I'll never forget, Irina. You were talking about those numbers on the plastic that I've tried to find and I cannot find, because it tells you what bin. My God, I don't know about you guys, but it says recycle stuff goes here, and there's 5 different bins. Honest to God, I don't know what goes in what. I put paper here. I don't know. So we got to do a better way, RFID tags or some way of identifying what goes in what bucket, because I want to do it. But I would say, if you're like me, 75% of the time I don't get it right because I don't know what bucket to put it in. There's too many: yellow, blue, green, orange. I mean, I don't know. So if we're going to do it, we talk about it. Let's keep it simple so we can figure it out. Well, we approach the can lid goes up because this has the right technology on it to open the lid, or it flashes a light, goes here. Make it simple. So these are the kind of simple things we need to do. When I'm investing in anything that makes humanity a better place, and of course, as you know, Kyle, I'm into artificial intelligence and love it. And with all the 33 zettabytes of data that we have today and growing at 62% a year, we had better understand that we got a lot of data coming in. If we can make decisions with it, we can make better choices for sustainability, better choices for impact, and make the world a bit better place. So when I say it, I mean, we're putting our money where our mouth is. I mean, we're doing it.
Well, and that's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, it's, you know, you talk about VCTV and, you know, getting the word out around the world. You know, I applaud you. I've been in talking to just today, Kenya, Nigeria, I mean, you name Finland, all over the place, because you got to get the word out and we all need to work together. And this is a fantastic platform to be able to compare ideas and help each other, right? I'm awestruck by the celebrity panels we have here today. And it's great to have them because we can all work together to, from our own little dent in the world, make a dent in the universe.
Absolutely. Thank you for the kind words. And also a shout out to the LATOKEN team and to Maria as well, who put a ton of effort into this to make BCTV possible as well. But thank you. And as to your point, and Keith, I see I'm going to come to you in a minute. This is a team effort. As you said, I mean, we all have a role to play, but working together can really make a true impact, and no pun intended there, but truth be told. And Keith, I saw you had a comment you wanted to add. Go ahead.
Yeah, Gary, you're absolutely right about recycling, but that's your problem. What you're describing is when you have pretty pure materials. What do you actually do with a post-consumer product, which is mixed materials? It's a disaster. How do you separating those materials, sorting them, all of that is incredibly labor intensive. Even if we do get AI in there to control robots and do that sorting and that separation and all that, it's still going to be really energy intensive. Even if we don't call it labor intensive, it's still going to boil down to using resources and time to do this stuff. It's a really difficult problem. We need to start designing our products with circularity in mind. And there is, I should say, an increasing movement from the major corporations of the world looking at consumer products to build this into their designs of their products from the beginning. As well, I'm looking at technology that is taking mixed material post-consumer products and chemically separating them without needing to go through any kind of mechanical, labor-intensive, energy-intensive sorting to let the chemistry do this for us. And that, for me, is that kind of work is very exciting, because then we can get to a really economic circular economy, economically effective. And that is going to have amazing impact.
Couldn't agree more. And everyone was shaking their heads during that point. So guys, thank you all so much for all the thoughts and insights. As we are coming here to the top of the hour, I want to come and make sure everyone gets in some closing thoughts, since we do have a big panel today, and then also a shout out of where everyone can find you online as well. And Brett, let's come to you. Thank you again, Keith. Brett, let's come to you to kick us off. Closing thoughts in terms of financial inclusion, sustainability, impact, but then also where can everyone find you online?
Yeah, a lot in that bundle there. I think going back to my previous point, I think just find the problem that you want to solve. And I think, it also has to be tied to economics, right? So we've always thought that you could do good and make money. I think tie those things together and tie, the impact that you want to make in the world, and go to work, and honestly don't expect that anyone's just going to raise their hands and want to come along, at least initially. So it takes a while to build the momentum, but I think this is a great panel showing how much momentum is being built in these different sectors. I can be found at brnoyce@unventures.co, Brett Noyce at LinkedIn, or find me at Telegram, Brett Noyce as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brett. Mark, to you, closing thoughts, and then also where can everyone find you online?
I think I agree a lot with what Gary said. I think Keith has a great point as well, and that goes back to the way I see things. If we kept things locally, we would understand what hurts us locally and what helps us locally. And I think what's happening is we're doing a lot of what's happening in the music business, what Julio said. Yeah, it's fine. I can go and discover a whole bunch of people, and I'm giving them back to the people that are going to make more money off the industry and keep controlling it. We need to stop that. We have enough technology now that we don't need, and I don't want to get sued, so I'm not going to say who, But there's a lot of people that control industry, a lot of one company people that control industries. And when you connect that industry to another industry, it controls another industry and it controls another industry. And when you put all these dots together, they all lead to the same thing. And they all have they're hedging both sides. So one of them is saying no to plastic while another company says yes to plastic. And the consumer is confused. If you keep it local, we know that in Costa Rica, bananas don't have the value that they have in Germany. I know that. And I also know that there's a lot of things that people are doing locally in Costa Rica with banana seeds, with banana plants, with the surplus stuff that comes out of bananas. They know that because they're local and it helps them. But the minute that we start I can't use that word either here, but the minute we start prostituting ourselves out to people with money, they're going to control us always. So, I mean, we have to figure out how to decentralize that control and keep it local so that we could help our local communities and say, okay, how does this work? And Brett said .co. Perfect example to end my story. .co, .Colombia. Mm-hmm. Colombia is making a ton of money off of that, right? Because .coms ran out. And it's helping the Colombian company. When you have .tv, there's some small country with 5 million people or 500,000 people. I don't remember the stats, but .tv, they're making a ton of money off of that too, because they kept it local. They said, hey, we can get the .tv, we can get the .co. People don't know that .co is Colombia. They just think it's .company or .something, but they capitalized on a local commodity that they have. So finishing that up, I just say, keep it local. We don't have to. If Germans love bananas, they have to find something that works like bananas. Why do we have to spend a whole bunch of coal and gasoline shipping bananas to people who love bananas because they're going to pay $50 a pound for bananas? It doesn't make sense. Find something that's like a banana that grows in Germany. We're smart enough, I think, right? So with that said, marklugo.com. Keith is shaking his head. I'm going to have to send my goon for him now. But no, I just keep it simple, like Gary said. But marklugo.com, I always go off on a rant. But I mean, I'm welcome to challenge anybody on my rant. So keep it local.
No, Mark, I'm shaking my head remembering a painful experience that went through while I was at BASF. The Europeans and Germans are so opposed to GMO and in general innovation in their food supply that there's such incredible opposition. While I was there, we tried to introduce a potato that expressed only the kind of starch that you make paper from, not even for eating, but it was being grown. The whole idea is you don't have to tear down trees to make paper. You just harvest a crop of potatoes. Great innovation. Nobody's going to eat it. Perfectly safe. The protests were through the roof. It was absolutely incredible. So I hope that somebody can introduce something that replaces bananas for Germans, but I think it's going to require some technical innovation, which is going to have a lot of cultural resistance. So right. I hope you're right, but it's going to be hard.
Yeah, and also on that note too, as Mark mentioned, the .co story. If you have a chance, audience, definitely take a few minutes of your weekend to check out the story of how the .co movement began and then flourished as well. I had the pleasure of speaking with the founders when it kicked off to Mark's story as well. And it's a phenomenal story and also continues to be one as well. So good shout out. Thank you, Mark. Keith, to you, closing thoughts. Where can everyone find you?
Sure, thanks. You can find me on LinkedIn or follow me on Twitter at Keith A. Gillard. My new firm is called Upper Stage Ventures. Website is very stealthy, but it's upperstage.ventures. If you've got a deal you want to submit to me through the website, that'd be great.
Wonderful. Matt?
You can find me on Twitter. My handle is Matt Greenfield with 2 T's. I guess my parting advice is that a lot of people, a lot of allocators still see impact investing as sort of a special case or a small subsector within venture capital. But actually, you've got a lot of capital going into a relatively narrow set of solutions. Like how many food delivery companies are there? And meanwhile, we're surrounded by these titanic global problems there are also titanic financial opportunities not yet addressed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Julio, to you. Thank you, Matt.
Okay, well, I agree with everybody. Let's do good. I think, you know, as consumers, we have obviously choices. You know, we're in a company that makes that sells dresses that are made by, you know, indigenous communities in Mexico. These dresses are high end. They're sold at places like Bergdorf Goodman in New York. It's called Colectiva Concepcion. These are some of the designs in the back there. I mean, if you're going to buy a dress and you just do a little bit of research, you know, you might feel better about spending the same amount of money for a dress made by indigenous communities somewhere that still meets the standards of a Bergdorf's, you know, rather than you know, something that maybe was made by machines somewhere else. I mean, I think, you know, people should just try to be more conscious about what they're buying. Maybe before you buy that banana, think about, you know, where did the banana come from? And if you look at the tiny sticker on it, you'll see that it came from Ecuador. I mean, listen, I don't want to kill the industry in Ecuador. I help Latin America, but you do have to be conscious of, you know, it's not just the planting, it's the transportation. That sometimes is behind some of these products. Anyway, the way to find us is online, nybaycapital.com. I'm on LinkedIn as Julio A. Marquez, and I'm always happy to return calls and return emails. Nothing ever gets you know, ignored. And if you have ideas as an entrepreneur, especially, we have capital and we have friends that can help you prosper. And if you do good, then we can help you do good.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julio. Irina.
Well, guys, we share 97% of our DNA with bananas. So maybe let's just tap into our inner self sometimes and say, you know, if I'm not locally next to bananas, maybe just, you know, feel the banana within inside you. So that's, I think that's, you know, we always can go to that. Pleasure to be here again, as always. Such a great points from everybody. I think that everyone has, you know, I just echo it all. And find me on Twitter. I'm changing my connection here. LinkedIn is just crazy busy, and I get all of this, whatever. I don't know. Find me on Twitter, Irina Litchfield at Crypto Superwoman.
Wonderful. Thank you, Irina. Gary Fowler, close us out. Closing thoughts. Where can everyone find you?
Yeah, no, this is great, Kyle, and we all can make an impact. So it's a matter of doing it rather than talking about it. So each one of us here can make an impact. Our side is with AI, and our side is impacting the Black community and also sustainability. You can reach me. I have a show, by the way. I have the former Chief Security Officer at Apple and one of the top persons from the State Department in illicit trade, who's also working closely with us on my show next week. So it should be very interesting. Rick Orloff and Dave Luna. So I'd love to have people tune in. Anyhow, you can reach me, Gary, at on LinkedIn, Gary Fowler, or you can reach me at Gary at GSDVS, my email, or gsdvs.com. And it'd be great to hear from each and every one of you. Thank you very much, Kyle.
That's a
Wonderful.
great show Gary has, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
That's a great show that Gary has, by the way. The Kawasaki segment is very well. Very well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I love what Julio's doing, by the way, too. He's got a lot of little extra goodies in his pocketbook there that he lets out every once in a while. But he's doing good stuff, Julio. Thank you.
That he is, and all of you are. And thank you all so very much for taking your time today, sharing your thoughts and insights around impact and sustainability and everything in between. Really appreciate it. And also having each of you here again on VCTV. It's an absolute pleasure to share the stage with each of you. To you, our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Do reach out if you'd like to be on a show like today. Thank you, Irina, but also do reach out to each and every one of our investors. Thank you, Mark, as they would all love to talk and continue the conversation with you as well, whether it's around today's topic or other topics. Again, make sure you add context when you do reach out. That goes for you too, entrepreneurs. And we do have a virtual stage here for you on VCTV. Do reach out if you'd like to be on it to build relationships with us as investors and founders. Focus on your area, get exposure to our live audience, and get a little bit of feedback on your product and service as well. With that, a big thank you as well to the LATOKEN team and Maria and the entire organization for making VCTV possible every single day. Again, all thank you so much for your time here on the panel, as well with our special guest down there with Arena today. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. Everyone have a great, great weekend. We'll be back here for more VCTV next week. Thank you, Julio, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hi, everyone.
Bye-bye.